Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez never imagined that a routine training exercise would change her life forever. At 28 years old, she had already served 2 tours overseas and earned the respect of every Marine under her command. Her colleagues knew her as someone who never backed down from a challenge and always put her team first. The morning started like any other at Camp Pendleton. Maria woke up at 0500 hours, laced up her combat boots, and prepared for what was supposed to be a standard endurance training session with her unit. The California sun was already beating down on the base, promising another scorching day in the desert training grounds. Maria had been feeling slightly unwell for the past few days, but she kept it to herself. As a female Marine in a predominantly male environment, she had learned early in her career that showing any sign of weakness could undermine her authority. She had worked too hard to earn her stripes to let a little fatigue slow her down. Her unit consisted of 50 Marines, mostly young recruits who looked up to her as their mentor and leader. Maria took this responsibility seriously. She remembered her own early days in the Corps, when a tough but caring drill instructor had pushed her to become the best version of herself. Now it was her turn to pass on that same dedication and strength to the next generation. The training exercise was designed to test the Marines' physical and mental endurance. They would need to complete a 15-mile hike through the desert, carrying full packs and equipment. Along the way, they would face various challenges that simulated real combat situations. Maria had completed this same exercise dozens of times before, both as a participant and as an instructor. As the unit began their march, Maria noticed that her heart was beating faster than usual. She attributed it to the excitement of leading her team and the adrenaline that always came with training exercises. The Marines behind her were in good spirits, joking and encouraging each other as they navigated the rocky terrain. 3 miles into the hike, Maria started experiencing sharp pains in her chest. She slowed her pace slightly, hoping the discomfort would pass. Several Marines noticed the change and asked if she was okay. Maria simply nodded and urged them to keep moving. She had trained these young soldiers to push through pain and adversity, and she wasn't about to set a different example now. By the 5th mile, the pain had intensified, and Maria was struggling to catch her breath. Sweat was pouring down her face, more than what the desert heat would normally cause. Her vision began to blur slightly, but she forced herself to keep walking. The Marines in her unit were depending on her leadership, and she refused to let them down. One of her corporals, James Mitchell, had been watching Maria closely. He had served under her for over a year and knew her well enough to recognize that something was wrong. He moved closer to her position and quietly asked if she needed medical attention. Maria shook her head firmly and told him to focus on his own performance. As they approached the 8th-mile marker, Maria's condition worsened dramatically. Her legs began to feel heavy, and she was having difficulty coordinating her movements. The chest pain had spread to her left arm, and she was experiencing waves of nausea. Despite these warning signs, she continued to lead her unit forward. The training scenario at the 8th mile required the Marines to low crawl through a series of obstacles while simulated enemy fire played overhead through speakers. Maria positioned herself at the front of the line to demonstrate the proper technique. As she dropped to her stomach and began to crawl, her body finally reached its breaking point. Corporal Mitchell was the first to notice that Maria had stopped moving. At first, he thought she was simply pausing to observe the other Marine's technique. But when he saw her lying motionless on the ground, he immediately knew something was seriously wrong. He called out to the medical corpsman who was accompanying the unit. The medic rushed to Maria's side and quickly assessed her condition. She was unconscious, her breathing was shallow, and her pulse was rapid and irregular. He immediately radioed for emergency medical evacuation while beginning CPR. The other Marines in the unit gathered around, their training exercise forgotten as they watched their beloved sergeant fight for her life. Within minutes, the sound of helicopter rotors filled the desert air. The medical evacuation team landed nearby and quickly loaded Maria onto a stretcher. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying their sergeant to the nearest military hospital, the 50 Marines stood in stunned silence. Many of them had tears in their eyes, unable to believe that their strong and determined leader had collapsed before their very eyes. Corporal Mitchell took charge of the unit and made the decision to abort the training exercise. As they began the long walk back to base, the Marines spoke quietly among themselves about Maria's condition. She had been more than just their commanding officer. She had been their mentor, their protector, and their friend. News of Maria's collapse spread quickly throughout the base. Other units that had trained under her leadership learned of her condition and began asking for updates. The base commander visited the hospital personally to check on her progress and ensure she was receiving the best possible care. The doctors determined that Maria had suffered a massive heart attack, likely caused by an undiagnosed genetic condition that had been exacerbated by years of physical stress and the demands of military service. She underwent emergency surgery to clear blocked arteries and install a pacemaker to regulate her heart rhythm. As Maria lay unconscious in the intensive care unit, word of her condition continued to spread beyond Camp Pendleton. Marines from other bases who had served with her during her overseas deployments heard the news and began reaching out to offer their support. Her reputation as an exceptional leader and dedicated Marine had earned her friends and admirers throughout the Corps. When Maria finally regained consciousness 3 days later, she found herself surrounded by flowers, cards, and letters from Marines across the country. Her hospital room looked more like a florist's shop than a medical facility. Nurses told her that they had been receiving deliveries constantly since word of her condition had spread. The first visitor Maria received was her commanding officer, Colonel Davis. He sat beside her bed and explained what had happened during the training exercise. Maria's eyes filled with tears when she learned that she had suffered a heart attack and would likely face a long recovery period. Her first concern wasn't for herself, but for the Marines in her unit who had witnessed her collapse. Colonel Davis assured her that her Marines were being taken care of and that they were all eager for news of her recovery. He also informed her that the Corps was investigating the incident to ensure that proper medical protocols had been followed and to prevent similar situations in the future. Over the next few days, Maria received a steady stream of visitors. Her parents flew in from Texas, and her younger brother, who was serving in the Army, was granted emergency leave to be with her. But it was the visits from her fellow Marines that touched her heart the most deeply. Corporal Mitchell was among the first to visit. He sat beside her bed and told her how proud he was of her courage during the training exercise. He explained that even as she was struggling with her condition, she had continued to put the safety and welfare of her Marines first. This dedication had not gone unnoticed by anyone in the unit. As Maria's condition stabilized, she began to learn more about the impact her collapse had on the Marine Corps community. Letters and emails were pouring in from Marines stationed around the world. Many shared stories of how Maria had influenced their careers or helped them through difficult times. Some were from Marines she had trained years earlier who credited her with shaping them into better soldiers and better people. One letter that particularly moved Maria came from a young woman named Private Sarah Johnson, who had been in Maria's first training class when she became a drill instructor. Sarah wrote about how Maria's example had inspired her to pursue a career in the Marines despite facing skepticism from family and friends. She explained that Maria had shown her that women could be strong leaders in the military and that dedication and hard work could overcome any obstacle. Dr. Sarah Chen, Maria's cardiologist, explained that the heart attack had been caused by a rare genetic condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. This condition causes the heart muscle to thicken, making it difficult for the heart to pump blood effectively. The condition often goes undiagnosed until a major cardiac event occurs, particularly in young, athletic individuals who may not experience obvious symptoms. The medical team informed Maria that she would need to undergo significant lifestyle changes and would likely not be able to return to active duty in the same capacity as before. This news was devastating for Maria, who had planned to make the Marines her lifelong career. The thought of being medically retired felt like losing her identity and purpose. As word of Maria's diagnosis and prognosis spread, something remarkable began to happen. Marines from across the Corps started organizing to show their support for their fallen sister. What started as individual expressions of concern grew into a coordinated effort involving multiple bases and thousands of service members. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Torres, who had served alongside Maria during her deployment in Afghanistan, began coordinating with other officers to plan a special tribute. He reached out to Marines who had served with Maria throughout her career, gathering stories and testimonials about her leadership and character. The response was overwhelming. Marines from every rank, from private to general, shared stories about Maria's impact on their lives and careers. Many described specific instances where her leadership had made a difference during training or combat situations. Others talked about her mentorship and the way she had helped them navigate the challenges of military life. As these stories were collected and shared, a picture emerged of a Marine who embodied the Corps' core values of honor, courage, and commitment. Maria had consistently put the welfare of her Marines above her own comfort and safety. She had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments and had always been the first to step forward when help was needed. The Tribute Planning Committee, which had grown to include dozens of Marines from different bases, decided that a simple ceremony would not be sufficient to honor Maria's service and sacrifice. They wanted to do something that would demonstrate the unity and brotherhood of the Marine Corps and show Maria that her dedication had not gone unnoticed. The idea for a mass formation began to take shape during a conference call between officers from 5 different bases. They envisioned bringing together hundreds of Marines in a single location to participate in a ceremony honoring Maria's service. The logistics would be challenging, but everyone involved was committed to making it happen. Major Lisa Harper, a logistics officer at Camp Pendleton, volunteered to coordinate the complex arrangements required to bring Marines from multiple bases to a single location. She worked with transportation units to arrange buses and flights, coordinated with base commanders to secure the necessary permissions, and organized housing and meals for hundreds of participants. As word of the planned tribute spread throughout the Marine Corps, more and more Marines volunteered to participate. The original plan to bring together 100 Marines quickly grew to 200, then 300, and eventually reached nearly 500 confirmed participants. Marines were requesting leave time and travel arrangements to be part of the ceremony. The scale of the response surprised even the organizers. It became clear that Maria's impact on the Corps had been far greater than anyone had realized. Marines who had never met her personally were requesting to participate simply because they had heard stories about her leadership and wanted to honor a fellow Marine who represented the best of their traditions. Maria remained unaware of the massive tribute being planned in her honor. Her doctors had advised limiting her stress and excitement during the recovery period, so the organizers decided to keep the ceremony a surprise. Her family and closest friends were asked to help maintain the secret while the final preparations were made. During her hospital stay, Maria continued to receive visits from Marines who happened to be in the area. Each visitor brought new stories about how news of her condition had affected the Corps. She began to understand that her collapse had resonated far beyond her immediate unit, and that Marines everywhere saw her as a symbol of dedication and service. 2 weeks after her heart attack, Maria was finally cleared by her doctors to attend a small ceremony that her unit had supposedly organized to welcome her back to the base. She was still weak and moved slowly, but she was eager to see her Marines again and assure them that she was recovering well. Her brother David picked her up from the hospital and drove her to what she thought would be a small gathering in one of the base's conference rooms. During the drive, Maria noticed an unusual amount of activity around the base. More vehicles than normal were parked in the lots, and she could see Marines in dress uniforms walking in the same direction. As they approached the main parade ground, Maria was confused to see hundreds of Marines already assembled in formation. She assumed there must be a separate ceremony taking place and wondered if they should wait until it was finished before proceeding to her own small gathering. David parked the car and helped Maria out, supporting her arm as they walked toward the parade ground. It wasn't until she saw the familiar faces of her own unit among the assembled Marines that she began to understand what was happening. Corporal Mitchell spotted her approaching and snapped to attention, followed immediately by the entire formation of nearly 500 Marines. The sight took Maria's breath away. Marines from bases across California, Nevada, and Arizona had traveled to Camp Pendleton to participate in this tribute. The formation included Marines she had trained years earlier, officers she had served with during deployments, and many Marines she had never met, but who had been inspired by her story. Colonel Davis stepped forward and helped Maria to a chair that had been placed at the front of the formation. Through tears, she watched as her fellow Marines demonstrated their respect and admiration through a precision drill routine that had been rehearsed for days. The coordination and unity displayed by the 500 Marines was breathtaking. Sergeant Major Patricia Williams, the senior enlisted Marine at Camp Pendleton, approached the microphone to address the formation. She spoke about Maria's exemplary service record and her dedication to developing the next generation of Marine leaders. She described how Maria's collapse during training had reminded everyone of the sacrifices that service members make every day, often without recognition or fanfare. The ceremony continued with testimonials from Marines representing different phases of Maria's career. A young corporal who had been in her first training class spoke about how Maria's tough but caring approach had helped him overcome his fear during his first deployment. A captain who had served alongside Maria in Afghanistan described her courage under fire and her unwavering commitment to bringing every Marine home safely. One of the most emotional moments came when Private Johnson, who had written the letter that had so moved Maria during her hospital stay, stepped forward to speak. She talked about how Maria had been the first person to tell her that she belonged in the Marines, and that her gender didn't limit what she could achieve. Johnson credited Maria with giving her the confidence to pursue leadership positions and to become an advocate for other women entering the Corps. As the testimonials continued, Maria realized that the ceremony was not just about honoring her service, but about celebrating the values and traditions that bound all Marines together. Each speaker talked about how Maria had embodied the Corps' commitment to developing leaders, protecting fellow Marines, and maintaining the highest standards of performance and character. The ceremony's climax came when the entire formation participated in a synchronized salute that lasted for several minutes. The precision and unity of 500 Marines saluting in perfect unison was a powerful display of respect and brotherhood that moved everyone present to tears. Maria later described it as the most humbling experience of her life. After the formal ceremony concluded, Maria spent hours meeting individually with Marines who had traveled great distances to be part of the tribute. Each conversation revealed new stories about how her example had influenced others and how news of her collapse had affected the broader Marine community. Many Marines expressed their gratitude for her leadership and shared how her training had prepared them for challenges they later faced in their careers. The organizers presented Maria with a commemorative plaque signed by all 500 participants, along with a collection of letters and photographs from Marines around the world who had wanted to be part of the tribute but couldn't attend in person. The volume of support from Marines she had never met was overwhelming evidence of how her reputation for excellence had spread throughout the Corps. In the weeks following the ceremony, Maria faced the difficult process of adjusting to her medical limitations and planning for her future. The heart condition meant that she could no longer participate in strenuous physical training or deploy to combat zones. However, the Marine Corps offered her opportunities to continue serving in roles that would allow her to share her knowledge and experience with other Marines. Maria accepted a position as an instructor at the Marine Corps Leadership Development Center, where she would be responsible for training senior enlisted Marines and junior officers. This role would allow her to continue contributing to the Corps while working within the constraints of her medical condition. She saw it as an opportunity to multiply her impact by developing leaders who would go on to train and mentor thousands of other Marines. The transition wasn't easy. Maria had to learn to accept help from others, something that had always been difficult for her. She also had to adjust to a slower pace of life and find new ways to maintain her physical fitness within the limits imposed by her heart condition. The support of her fellow Marines made this adjustment easier, as many continued to check on her progress and offer encouragement. 6 months after the ceremony, Maria received news that she had been selected for promotion to gunnery sergeant, despite her medical limitations. The promotion board recognized her exceptional leadership record and her continued potential to contribute to the Corps in her new role. The promotion ceremony was attended by many of the same Marines who had participated in the original tribute, creating another opportunity for the community to demonstrate their ongoing support. Maria's story became an inspiration for Marines throughout the Corps. Her example of continuing to serve despite facing significant personal challenges demonstrated the resilience and adaptability that the Marines value so highly. She frequently spoke at leadership seminars and training events, sharing her experiences and the lessons she had learned about the importance of taking care of one's health while maintaining dedication to the mission. The 500 Marines who participated in the tribute ceremony remained connected through social media and regular gatherings. Many described the experience as one of the most meaningful moments of their military careers. The ceremony had reminded them of the bonds that unite all Marines and the importance of supporting each other through difficult times. Years later, Maria continued to serve as an instructor and mentor, touching the lives of hundreds of new Marines each year. The heart condition that had ended her combat career had opened new opportunities for service that proved to be just as rewarding and impactful. Her story became part of Marine Corps tradition, told to new recruits as an example of how true leaders put others first and how the Corps takes care of its own.